Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at the 2021 AL Rookie of the Year and NL Rookie of the Year finalists and see how they're starting off their 2022, how they did in the first about quarter of the season. So a little note with the stats on here. They're normalized to 162 games, or for pitchers, the normalization is used for 34 starts. For example, a Rosarday's WAR was not actually 4.5, it was about 3.9, but it was normalized to 162 games. So that's how these stats are going to work on here. Obviously, most of them are rate stats, so it doesn't apply, but for the WARs and then the home runs and innings and such. So first off, we have the AL. We have Randy Arozarena, who won the award. So 4.5 WAR last season, compared to this season, where he's on track for only one and a half WAR. So that's a 3 times decrease in his production. You do not like to see. You want to see your rookie of the year candidates keep that up, but usually players have a sophomore slump, so it's to be expected, though still not what you'd like to see. He had a 274 batting average last season, 264 this season. Not a big deal. 356 on base percent, whereas this season only a 313. That's a decently significant decrease. His walk rate went down 3%, so that's definitely contributing, but there still has to be a little bit more factors than just the walk rate because that doesn't fully account for that gap in there. His slugging was 459, now it's 423, though his WRC plus is not as much worse as you'd think. It's only down 10 points from 128 to 118. So overall, he's still having a pretty solid season, though the 1.5 WAR is a little concerning. He's on track for 15 home runs this season. Last season he had 23. So that decreased home run production could be part of the reason why his slugging is down a bit. So next, we have Garcia, the pitcher for the Astros. He pitched to, normalized over 68 or over 34 starts. 3.6 WAR. This season he's on track for 2.1. So WAR with pitchers isn't the best stat. It's not always the most accurate. It's way better for batters, but I still included it here. So 2.1 WAR isn't horrible, but definitely like to see a bit more from him. 3.48 ERA last season, 3.38 ERA this season, so he has improved on that. And then his FIP, though, was 3.63 last season, and this season it's 4.19. So that has gotten worse by a decent amount. And the gap between his ERA and his FIP has increased by about 70 points. If you don't like to see, you want to see the numbers kind of as close together as possible, meaning the pitcher doesn't have too much good luck or bad luck. You want their actual results to be showing like their true potential, what the pitcher can really do. You want that reflected in their stats. You don't want stuff left up to the defense or random other on-field events. And then his walk rate is essentially the same. Last season was 2.9, now it's 2.95. Strikeout rate also is about the same, 9.68 to 9.49. And that consistency is really good. You want to see that, especially with a rookie going to their sophomore year. You don't want to see wild, crazy changes in their numbers. You want to see them set into a rhythm and have that consistency throughout their seasons. Last season, he was on track for 155 innings, whereas this season he's on track for 179 innings. But his innings per start are essentially the same. It just last season he had like 2 relief appearances, so that's kind of what messes with his overall innings and such. But overall, he's pretty consistent. The stats are relatively similar through the 2 seasons, and that's honestly more important at this time than exactly what the stats are. As long as they're still good, which they are, consistency is key. So next we have the 3rd place finisher, Wander Franco, who, if he played a bit more in the season, probably would have won the award. Definitely should have, because I think that if you played enough games to be qualified for Rookie of the Year and then to not be on the ballot for the 2022 season, then his production should have been valued enough to win it. He certainly, by pure rates wise, he certainly had enough to win it. So I think that he should have won. Or if the voters thought that he didn't play enough, then he should still be up for it again this season. So he was in that weird zone where you played enough to get off, but you didn't play enough to be viewed as well. And I don't really agree with that. I don't like how the voters view it that way or how the system works like that. I think it's too few plate appearances. It's only about 130, I believe. I think that's far too few to remove rookie eligibility. But anyway, last season on pace for 5.6 WAR, which is fantastic, and if he hit that, certainly would have won it. This season 4.9, so he's not really slowed down much. So being on pace for 5 WAR in your second season is fantastic. The Rays are certainly happy with that, especially since he got his big extension in the offseason. His average went down from 288 to 267. His on-base percent also dropped a very significant amount from 347 to 294. And his slugging went from 463 to 422, meaning his WRC plus went from 127 to 111. So again, offense is down as a whole this season, so those large drops in offensive numbers aren't creating as much of a drop in his WRC plus as you would think, because everyone is doing worse on offense. And his walk rate decreased from 8 to 4, which 4 is really low. For someone who is touted as having as much plate discipline and such as him, having only a 4% walk rate is really not what you want to see. Though he is keeping his strikeout rate low, really low too, if he went down from 12 to 10. So when the strikeout rate is also that low, the walk rate being low isn't as big of a deal, because he just hits a lot of balls in play. That's his specialty. He can really hit the ball anywhere, no matter where it's pitched to him. He can make contact. He always makes contact. So his very high swing rate contributes to the low walks, but then also his high contact rate contributes to low strikeouts. So it balances out to an extent. And then last season, he was on track for 16 home runs, and this season he's on track for 16 home runs. Consistency. So next we're moving over to the NL. So Jonathan India won it last season. Again, these stats are over 162. So 3.3 WAR. And I'll get to why there's a star right there after. I'll just go through this season first, or last season first, 2021. 3.3 WAR, 269 average, 379 on base, 459 slugging, to a 122 WRC plus for a rookie. Good job. That's exactly what you want to see. 11% walk rate and a 22% strikeout rate with a 23 home runs, which that's definitely very solid. Though this season, he has only played 11 games when most teams have played about 42 games, 43, because he's been injured. He's currently on the injured list. As of 2 days ago with a hamstring strain, he's expected to be in the IL for about 10 to 14 days, and then he'll do a minor league rehab assignment, so he'll probably miss about 20 total games from this injury. He's already missed games earlier in the season. So I couldn't really put his 162 for this season like I did with the other players, because it just would not be accurate whatsoever. In the 11 games he did play, though, negative 0.2 WAR, 295 average, so significantly up from last season. 311 on base percent, which is significantly down, which I'll get to why. 341 slugging, which is down by over 100 points, so his slugging is barely even higher than his on base percent, and to a 81 WRC plus, 41 points below last season WRC plus. In a season where offense is down as a whole, WRC plus drops are common, but not usually significant. But his still dropped 41 points, which is a humongous gap. And then a lot of that is because his walk rate went from 11 to 2. Just a 2% walk rate with a 22% strike rate is unacceptable. You cannot be productive with that whatsoever. I don't even know how to explain that more. You can't have that low. There's only a 16% or 16-point difference between his average and on base due to his 2% walk rate. You could not have that whatsoever. And he's also hit 0 home runs, which really does not help his slugging whatsoever, when there's a big reason why I dropped 118 points. So it'd be hard to judge whether Jonathan India can get back on track, because this season, obviously, he's not really going to get as much of an opportunity to. Hopefully, when he comes back in about 2 weeks, he'll start producing as he did last season. So we shall see. Next, we have Tyler Rogers, who finished second. Last season, he was on track for 5.7 WAR, the highest on this, even higher than Wander. He had a 2.64 ERA and a 2.55 FIP. Both of those are fantastic. And they're very close together, meaning, again, not much good or bad luck, kind of just like Garcia, to a 311 walk percent, whereas this season, Actually, I'll get his this season also kind of fluky, so I'll get to that after too. Just like India, though he's not injured. 311 walk percent, 11% strikeout rate, which is very solid, and a 181 innings pitched with only 5.3 innings per start. For as productive as he was, having more innings per start definitely would have been ideal. But this season, though he's gone 8 starts, just like almost every starter in the league. Some have gone 9, but 8 is where you're at if you're not injured. 0 WAR, 5.20 ERA, 4.71 FIP, 3.72 walk rate, so decently higher than his one last season. Only an 8.4 strikeout rate, so a lot lower than his one last season. He's on track for 153 innings and only 4.5 innings per start. So he's only going on average half the game. You cannot have that. So if someone as productive as he was last season, you really need that production again. The Marlins rotation is supposed to be pretty stacked. It's supposed to be full of these rookies who are really, really solid. So hopefully Rogers can get back on track because he's supposed to be a very pivotal part in their new young team as a whole, but especially their rotation. Maybe there's a lingering injury that's contributing to this, but his 8 starts doesn't really say so. If there were an injury, he probably wouldn't have already pitched in 8 games. Finally, we have Dylan Carlson of the Cardinals. 2.8 WAR last season to only 1.2 this season, so that's a bit disappointing. Hopefully he can at least push that rate up and break 2 WAR this season. But 266 average last season to a 247 this season. 343 on base to a 291 on base. You never want that below 3. That is not at all where you want it, and that's because of his 5% walk rate this season, whereas last season he had 9% walk rate. So even if he gets that walk rate up just a little bit, it should push him over 300 on base percent. And he also only has a 363 slugging, which again, super low. 989 WRC plus, whereas last season 113, perfectly fine. Though obviously his WRC plus this season needs to come up. He needs to help the Cardinals out more. And strikeout rate went from 25 to 15, so that's great. He's cutting me down on that, so that helps make up a little bit for his really low walk rate. But his home run power has significantly dropped. It went from 20 last season to only what should be 8 this season. That's a big problem. He needs to get up a bit more, get his slugging higher, walk a bit more, get his OPS, his on base percent higher. So basically walks and home runs he needs to improve on. So this was a look at the 2021 Rookie of the Year finalists, how they're doing this season. Probably the best so far is Garcia and Wander. The other ones, mostly the ones in the NL, are injury, disappointing, and then kind of disappointing to an extent. So really all of them have got to pick it up and start contributing and helping other teams more. And hopefully their third year in the league will fare a lot better for most of them. Thank you.